Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about Jeepers Creepers 2, since I recently reviewed the first one, and it does come in the same DVD pack as the first film as well. So I'm going to take this video to review the second film for you today. Um, in Jeepers Creepers 2, it actually takes place, for those who didn't see the first one or don't know a lot about the first film, this creature basically comes out for 23 days straight on every 23rd spring. And it basically goes out and finds eyes and faces and hands and legs and things like that it likes the best to become more human than it is, since it starts off as this creepy creature thing. And in the follow-up, like I said, it does take place almost immediately after the first. The first, it takes place like right in the middle of its feeding frenzy. The second one takes place basically on the final day of the feeding frenzy from the first film. And I think this film only came out like 2 years after the first, so it was still relatively fresh in people's minds. And so basically in this film, while the creature's on its final day of feeding, there's a high school basketball team that's trying to come home from this big game they were out of town on. And since this is kind of this small town that not a lot of people really go and visit very often, it's kind of this creepy small town that this high school basketball team is not used to being in and things like that. They immediately run into the creature. They have to stay on the bus. They have to basically find ways to survive, since the creature is interested in certain body parts of some of the people that are on the bus. And they also don't have a very good way of reaching out to people saying that they need help or anything like that, because this film was in 2003, released and takes place in 2003, I would imagine, or I guess in this case in 2001, since it's only a couple days after the first film. But either way, cell phones really weren't very, they were around, but they weren't super common at the time like they are now, and with like smartphones and everything like that. So basically, they don't really have a very good way of reaching out for help, because they are in the middle of nowhere, and because nobody has like good reception, and the bus's technology can't reach out very well. So basically, they're stuck there. They have to figure out what to do about this creature, how to make sure everybody on the basketball team survives, including the coach, including the bus driver, including everybody else that isn't even on the basketball team. And there's also a local farmer that lost his little boy from the creature, and he finds a weapon that the creature uses to kind of, take out cars, take out trucks whenever it finds somebody that it wants on the highway and things like that. So basically, this farmer takes that weapon to his advantage and try to end this creature once and for all, while also trying to save this high school basketball team that he manages to find on the road while trying to end this creature's life. So overall, guys, I liked Jeepers Creepers 2. I will say right up front, though, it's not as good as the first one. Unfortunately, it is a sequel that does not live up to the first, unfortunately, because I thought the first film was really good. For those who saw my first film's review of the first Jeepers Creepers, my previous video before this one, I really liked that movie. I thought there was things where it was creepy. The creature was well written. I thought the whole thing with the brother and sister I thought was well written. It was a lot more stylish. There was a lot more scenes where they're going to places that are just really creepy, like the tunnel that the creature goes to and things like that. But there's things about Jeepers Creepers 2 that aren't as good. It's clearly the follow-up. It's clearly the film that they probably made it just because the first one made a lot of money and things like that. They do, I guess you learn a little bit more about the creature, not a lot. You do kind of find out kind of how you can end its life during the 23-day feeding frenzy and things like that. They do, without giving too much away, they do somehow find a way to get Justin Long's character to have a cameo in this, and it makes sense for when you're watching it. And like I said, I can't really give too much away if you haven't seen the first. But his character does have a cameo of some kind in this movie. But for my positives and negatives of Jeepers Creepers 2, for the most part, it is a very entertaining film. I never felt bored watching it. I thought they definitely did a good job with keeping things tense, making sure that things kind of felt scary for the people who are on the bus, and the fact that they can't really reach out for help very well. I thought the thing with the farmer where he finds the weapon and kind of wants to track down the creature because he took his little boy and things like that, I thought all that was very well done. So it's an entertaining film. It's definitely not a film where I felt bored at all. It definitely flows at a smooth pace. It's actually a little bit longer than the first Jeepers Creepers, believe it or not. But I think because it flows so well, you really can't tell the difference of the slightly longer runtime and things like that. So it's a very entertaining film. So for those who are looking for a film that has a creepy creature in it, you're looking for a good time, looking to be entertained, I think Jeepers Creepers 2 will do the trick for you. I also like how the bus's like contained environment was done very well. It almost felt like a contained thriller, just because they are on this bus, they don't have any food or water and things like that. But they do have to stay on the bus, or else because the second they leave the bus, the creature can have them for dinner and things like that. It was a very contained environment. There's clearly people who don't get along on this basketball team, so I thought all that was very well handled. And I thought the contained environment feeling of the film was very effective here. And I do like how they did use the same creature from the first film. They all the things that you thought were creepy the first time around are just as creepy this time around. That actually leads into my next compliment for the movie, where the creature kind of has more taunts this time. It has more in-your-face behavior. There's even a scene I really liked where like he breaks through windows and really tries to kind of grab you, and the way that they filmed it made it look like he was grabbing you as the audience and things like that. Almost kind of felt like something you would watch in 3D. So I thought the way they could make the creature more creepy, I thought was very well handled here. Because in the first film, obviously he would just do stuff that was just creature stuff, like he would eat a tongue or he would have this tunnel and things like that. So I thought, as far as giving the creature more creepy behavior goes, I thought that was pretty effective here. So I thought that aspect of the film was very well handled. I also like the use of the creature's weapons. I like how there's people who kind of are trying to use that to kind of take out the creature. I like how it's kind of made out of material that isn't made out of something that a person would make for a weapon. So it's not just the creature using these weapons. There's actually people who kind of track them down, want to use that to take this creature out once and for all. And overall, it makes for a very satisfying experience in that regard. But for my negatives of Jeepers Creepers 2, unfortunately, it's not very scary at all. Besides the couple things I mentioned earlier, like the creature trying to grab you in the when he's grabbing the camera and things like that, and just compared to the first, the first one had a lot more scares. It had the creature had that tunnel, he had that car. There was just more things about the creature that just makes him more creepy. So unfortunately, this time around, the scares is pretty drastically lower this time around. There's not as much scares this time around. So for those who are hoping for a Jeepers Creepers film that is as creepy as the first film, you're not going to get that here, unfortunately. And overall, Jeepers Creepers 2 kind of falls in a category that I like to call dark action movies, where, yeah, technically speaking, it's a horror film, but it's just mostly an action movie with darker tones and a darker feeling and a darker story. The film kind of reminded me of Freddy vs. Jason in that sense, where, yeah, Freddy vs. Jason's technically a horror film, but because there is a lot of action, there is a lot of things you would see in action movies in it, it just felt like a dark action movie. And I think that's something that Jeepers Creepers 2 might have suffered from over the years, is the first film's actually an actual horror film, like you'll actually get scared by it. This film is an action film with a lot of darker moments, so it feels like a dark action movie. And I don't know if that's the right vibe that they wanted to go with here. And overall, the basketball team here is pretty boring. A lot of the characters are very one-dimensional. They're just kind of characters that are meant for bait for the creature. There isn't a lot of depth behind a lot of them. There's like one character on the bus that has these weird dreams that kind of explains the creature more. So for those who didn't see the first film, it has a little bit more context as to what this creature is, what it's doing over 23 days, that it happens every 23rd spring, so it doesn't happen every single year. But for the most part, the characters that are on the bus are pretty boring. Yeah, you're going to have the guy that freaks out when the creature shows up. Yeah, you're going to have the guy that's trying to be the hero and trying to save everybody. Yeah, you're going to have the bully. Yeah, you're going to have the jock. Yeah, you're going to have the coach that is trying to keep things under control. It's a very, the second you say high school basketball team, it's exactly the way you're going to see it and feel it during the movie. There really is not a lot of depth to any of them. So character-wise, this is not a very character study-driven movie, unfortunately. The creature doesn't have his car this time around, which I thought was pretty disappointing. I thought it would have been really cool to see him maybe trying to run this bus off the road with its car and things like that. Because as far as I remember, I think the car didn't get destroyed at the end of the first film, so they could have gave the creature the car to drive in for this time around. I thought that would have been more effective. You just kind of see the creature fly around a lot in this film, unfortunately. Um, and then I think this film would have benefited from a more story-driven approach. It's just not very. It's basically just here's a scenario, the creature's involved with it, things happen on the bus, things happen when they try to leave the bus, and that's essentially the movie. So I thought this film would have benefited from a more story-driven approach because the first one kind of had that. It had the whole brother and sister thing. They're in this town they're not familiar with. They don't have good cell phone reception. Um, it's a much more story-driven story in that movie, and I think this film would have benefited from a more story-driven story this time around. So, Jeepers Creepers 2, I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. I think it is good. I wasn't disappointed in it. I think it is a step down from the first film, unfortunately. The scares aren't as good. It feels more like a dark action movie. The basketball team characters are pretty boring this time around. The creature doesn't drive his scary car this time, and I really do feel like the film would have benefited from a more story-driven approach. So, 8 out of 10 for me. I like Jeepers Creepers 2. It's just not as good as the first film. If I can track the third film down, maybe I'll watch it, but I don't know. It seems like a pretty difficult film to track down from what I'm hearing. So, that's my review of the second film, you guys, and I will see you here for another movie review, hopefully soon.